So I managed to reawaken a childhood dream of this kind of Harry Pottery alchemist's feel, the way I always wanted my place of work to look. Spring has finally arrived, and we had almost over 20 degrees in the last couple of days. It's been so amazing to see the snow start to melt. The ice is starting to withdraw from the lake, and nature is coming alive again. So it's just a tiny little shoot still. We don't have any leaves or anything like that, but the grasses are getting green, and you can really feel that nature is coming alive. I wanted to show you how I paint on glass. You have to paint in layers. You have to paint in lots and lots and lots of layers. I paint with these little powders. Uh, it's a different pigment, a different color in each powder, and I just place them here on my palette, and I mix them with these different oils that I talked about. So I have some really, really thick ones. It's called Copaiba. That's a really, really thick one, which means that the paint will stick really well to the glass, but it might be a bit more runny. If I want it to be more fluent, I have lavender oil, I have aniseed oil, I have nelic oil, I'm not sure what that's called in English, a different flower again. And there are some mediums that just have kind of a consistency that is good for most things, so it's kind of an in-between. And learning how to mix these different paints is one essential thing of glass painting. So you start with just a glass. This is a candle glass, so quite a thick, proper one. And it's just white, like this. And then I just start with one very thin layer. If I paint it too thick, I'll get dust into it, and that'll stick, which doesn't look very, very nice at all. So I have to paint in very thin layers, especially with the big ones. So after one layer is painted on, it will only look something like this. It will still be very see-through, the color won't be very strong, and I basically just have to paint the next layer. And in between each layer, it has to be put in the kiln at about 580 to 640 degrees Celsius. And that takes a couple of hours to go up and down. And then the paint is completely fused with the glass. And that's a wonderful thing with glass painting, porcelain as well, is that the paint, when it's on, which means that once it's been in the kiln once, it really, really sticks to the glass, and there's nothing you can do to change it, which is a drawback, but it's also a good thing. As I talked about in my last video, I paint in layers with oil as well. So the techniques that I used with oil, I can just continue to use with glass, and just much more. So after it looks like this, the next layer will just look a little bit stronger. So it will look a little bit like this, and the next layer after that, I will have some shades, and I will have some shapes. Let's see. A couple of glasses here. And the next layer might just be something like this. It might just be a few branches. Often it's the landscape that's come on, and then some clouds. Sometimes after that's burned, I'll do another layer of paint to kind of just get everything harmonized a bit. And then after that, at the fourth, fifth, or sixth layer, I can actually start painting the landscape. I can start painting some flowers in, I can start painting leaves, I can start painting trees. And it's at that point that the landscape really comes to life and I establish what's there. With glass painting, of course, I paint with a light source. So I have a candle inside. I don't always paint with the candle inside, but especially at the later stages, I have to have a candle inside because it looks so much different in the dark when there's a light inside as opposed to just light from the outside. And that is one of the joys of painting with glass. It's the fact that you actually have a proper light source from the inside. That when you paint, you the logic becomes quite different than when you paint either on porcelain or in oil, because the light source just completely changes the way you can paint and the way you have to paint. With glass painting as well as with porcelain, you can actually paint with true gold. So in this glass, I have painted an entire starting layer with gold. And it's a brown liquid gold that you then apply onto the glass, and once you have fired it in the kiln at the same temperatures as your paint, it turns into true gold. So it's just not just a gold color the way you can do with other things, but it's actual gold. You can do this with platinum as well instead of so to get the silver look, you can do it with bronzes, and you can do it with liquid metals. So there are a lot of things that you can do when painting on glass that you just can't do with oil colors, and that just makes it a completely different experience. Of course, when you paint on glass, you end up more pushing the paint around than you do on an oil canvas, where the paint sticks really well to the canvas and you kind of smear it around. Here you more push it on a hard surface. And while I use the same techniques that I do in oil, there are a lot of things that are quite radically different when you paint on glass. Another thing that comes when I paint on glass, and I've only started with this in a few months ago actually, because of course the light shines through. It's a wonderful thing to be able to bring the light forth again after you painted a layer on top. So I used to just paint layer on top of each other, and I had to keep thinking how I could preserve the light in the background. But now I have an engraving tool. And with the engraving tool, I can trace lines, I can get the sun out, I can paint stars, I can make flowers light up in the night. And so when I engrave and when I then paint afterwards, I paint when it's really dark. So now you can see that it's getting darker. I actually nowadays I have to wait because we're mid-May and it's always light here, except in the middle of the night still we have a little bit of darkness. As you can see, it's very different to paint on it, and it looks completely different, and I have to keep these two stages in mind. So after I have engraved a glass, I keep painting layers, and I can highlight, I can paint some more shadows, and I can just use what I have engraved to accentuate and to really bring forth the light. I can paint sun and lots of things that I haven't been able to before I started with the engraving tool. So when we put the light source inside of the canvas, you can see here when it's dark, completely dark, you can't really see much color. You can only really see the highlighted color and you can see the shadows. So it's really important to keep both things in mind when you paint a candle glass. How it's going to look during the day, even how it's going to look without a candle inside, and how is it going to look when it's completely dark. So there are just a lot of different things to keep in mind. But that's one of the things that make glass painting such an incredible joy and so much fun. It really is the variety of the things that you can do with it.